place. Oh man, that's great. And he says, no, it's not. And it was just a reaction. His reaction was, no, it's not. It wasn't like he was being arrogant. He says, no, it's not. You know? And, you know, there was an adult there, and he looks at me, he goes, hey, man, why does your son have that attitude about that? He just took 8th in the world, you know? And I understand why the adult is making that statement, because so many people have that mindset of, I did my best, oh, I accomplished, I took 2nd in the country, yay. Name one person that goes into a tournament hoping they take 2nd. Name one person that goes into a tournament. I don't care if it's the World Championships. And he'll tell you. He'll say, I didn't train for Worlds to take 8th. Yeah, he beat the champion of all of Asia. That was a heck of an accomplishment. Okay? But you ask him and it doesn't mean a lot to him. He took 8th. Why am I using him as an example? It's the closest person to me that could give you an example of something of how you should be thinking. Okay? You guys aren't winning championships not because of the coaching, not because you're not athletic, not because, you know, you're not all black. I hate to hear that shit. Okay? Not because any of that. You're not winning championships because of the way you think. It's the only difference. The way you think. And you've got to hold yourself to a higher standard. Okay? I had my oldest son come to me in middle school, when he was in middle school in 8th grade. He says, Dad, I got to talk to you, my youngest son. I says, what's up, Elijah? He says, Dad, I want you to train me this year. You know, I said, why is that? He says, because I want to win the county championship. I said, so does every other wrestler in middle school. How many people wrestle in middle school? Okay, keep your hands up if you wanted to win the county championship. Exactly. You didn't want to win. Oh, you're still in middle school? You don't want to win the county championship? No? So then, be bold and keep your hand up. You know? And he says, I want to win the county championship. I says, so does everybody else. So what's the difference between you and them? So he looks at me and goes, okay, Dad, what should be my goal then? I said, your goal should be to have every match won 15-0 and then pin your opponent. That should be your goal. He just looked at me and said, okay, Dad. And guess what? He went undefeated 15 matches, okay, had all his matches won 15-0 and then pinned, with the exception of one match. He let the kid go. He gave up 1 point in the entire season. 1 point. What's the difference between him and the other wrestlers? He was bold enough to have that goal and work towards it. What happens if he falls short? Maybe take 2nd? That's not too shabby, right? You know, but what happens with everybody else that doesn't have that goal? Your goals are to win matches. Don't have goals to win matches. Everybody that steps on the mat has a goal to win that match. Your goal should be to absolutely dominate your opponent. Absolutely dominate. Okay? Get him to the point that he wants to quit. I have a 13-year-old named Julian Ramirez. He's in 8th grade. Took 3rd in high school states last year. Okay? And he listens to everything I tell him. How many of you guys have watched the Dan Gable documentary? Dan Gable documentary. You should watch that. You guys are wrestlers. Okay, you have only 2 guys on here that have watched it. How many of you guys do not know who Dan Gable is? Raise your hand. Put your hands up. How many of you guys know who Michael Jordan is? Look around you. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Because you're not taking pride in your sport. Dan Gable was not only one of the greatest wrestlers of all time in this country, one of the greatest coaches of all time. Okay? Today, go home, punch in Dan Gable, and watch the documentary. It's 43 minutes long. Okay? Watch it. All right? Here's a guy, what was the toughest tournament in the world? Toughest wrestling tournament in the world. Anybody know? No, it's not the Olympics. You're cheating. Put your hand up. Okay. It's called the Tbilisi tournament. Okay? Toughest tournament in the world. Okay? Why? Because back then, it wasn't like Russia and, Uzbekistan and Ukraine. No, it was all one. It's all one. So the top 3 guys in the Soviet Union, top 3 or 4 guys could have all won the Olympic Games. That's how good they were. Okay, so when the U.S. went to wrestle in the Tbilisi tournament, the Soviets had 2, 3, 4 guys wrestling in that tournament. They're 3 or 4 best guys. Well, Dan Gable made one of them walk off the mat and leave the arena. In the middle of the match, the guy just said, "Screw it," and walked off. And I tell all my guys, I said, that's your goal. Your goal is to break your opponent to the point that he wants to get the hell off the mat because he's humiliated. There's nothing he can do. So here he is wrestling one of the best guys in the world, and the guy walks off. He makes him walk off the mat. And I teach that to my kids. And Ramirez is sending me a text. He's at the National Duels in Virginia. He says, "Coach, I made the guy walk off the mat. One of the top kids in the country. I had him beat 14-0. Left. Is that possible? Okay. Guys, I encourage you. Now I'll encourage you. Take all the things these coaches are teaching you and live it. I mean, really live it. When Coach sits here and tells you, me and Coach Verona used to wrestle him and beat the shit out of each other. That's true. We would draw blood. There's no one that I've enjoyed wrestling more than him because it was the nastiest wrestling matches I've ever had. And neither one of us complained. It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm bleeding." It wasn't like, "Oh, this hurts." None of that. We all had goals and we all worked hard towards them. Okay? And if you do that, regardless of the outcome, you're going to look back and you're going to take pride in what you've accomplished. Okay? So I challenge you guys to change the way you think. Okay? When Coach says you're going out for a 20-minute run, okay, you guys are out there running, right? Ask yourselves, did you see anybody out there running like a state champ? Raise your hand if you saw anybody out there running like a state champ. It's not fair to you. Why do you work so hard? Why do you put in so many hours? Why do you make these coaches come here and leave their kids at home and spend time with you if that's not your goal? Think about that. So why not change that around and say, you know what? What's your name? Angel? Why don't you start thinking, hey, I can win states this year, maybe next year? Huh? How about you start thinking like that? Huh? How about you start thinking like that? You have the tools. I've seen you wrestle. You have the tools. You know, your work ethic is okay. If you were to compare it to somebody that's a state champ, a national champ, it sucks. So why not raise it? Rather than say, "Oh, I suck, I'll never make it." Let me make a decision and raise it. Yeah? You're a big dude. You know? You are the type of heavyweight that a coach looks at and says, this kid, if he worked out his grades up for the next 4 years and busted his ass in wrestling, this kid would be a Division I prospect. But you got to change the way you think, because the way you think, you ain't going nowhere. When a coach is telling you to stretch, you ain't going nowhere. And I'm here. It doesn't bother me to tell you. I'm going to tell you. Okay? If you make a decision to change that, coach says stretch. You know what? We have an 8-minute stretch per wrestler in my wrestling room, okay, to work on flexibility. And it's mandatory. And they all see how they benefit from it. You benefit, you don't get hurt, and there's a lot more things you can do. Can you imagine being a big, strong, fast, flexible heavyweight with the attitude of a national and world champion? Imagine that rather than the attitude you have now. Imagine as a freshman making the state finals. Imagine that. What if you decided that's going to be me? And you made that decision and you said, "Coach, I want to make the state finals this year." Not when I'm a senior, this year. And you work towards that. You have all the tools and you have the coaching. So it's your responsibility. You decide. This year when I watch you wrestle in districts, regionals, and state, I'm going to know whether you took this conversation seriously or not. And I'll say one last thing before we start. When we start, it's go, go, go. You know, you guys sit there, and the coach is looking, practice hard. We know this shit. I've been doing this since 1979. You wrestle hard. Yeah. Coach isn't looking, and you slow it down. You know, who do you think you're fooling? Just fooling yourself. Because you know what? Ben Peterson, raise your hand if you know who Ben Peterson is. Doesn't shock me. Okay? Ben Peterson, Olympic champion. I went to one of his clinics one time. I love learning. I just love learning from everything. And Ben Peterson said, what you do behind closed doors will scream out the day of competition. What you do behind closed doors. What he means by that is, what you do when no one's looking, the day of competition is going to show. So if you're slacking when coach ain't looking, guess what? You're going to get your ass beat in competition. Okay? If you're busting your ass when coach isn't looking, it's because you're driven and you want to be a champion. You want to take this moment and embrace it. Because high school only comes around once. Okay? How many seniors we got here? Okay? Enjoy it, because this may be the last time that you wrestle. Maybe the last time you compete. Live in the moment. Okay? So all you guys, I challenge every single one of you guys to change the way you think. Change it. Stop, don't look up at people as though, wow, this guy's great. Say, coach, I just watched this guy, named Cael Sanderson. I watched him on YouTube. How do I do what he did? Hey, coach, I just watched that documentary that he told us about, Dan Gable. Okay, how do I do what he did? What's the difference? I wish somebody would have told me, hey, man, you could be a world Olympic champion. And I'm telling you guys, there's no difference. Don't be afraid to be great. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and say, I want to be a state champ. What do I got to do? Because what happens is you're looking at other people at other schools and say, oh, yeah, they're great. And you have all these excuses. They've been wrestling since they were 4. Mark Schultz started wrestling in 11th grade as an Olympic champion. In 11th grade. California state champ as a senior. It's a decision. So I challenge each and every one of you guys to make that decision. Don't feel bad about what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, you're down here right now. Let's raise it up. You guys got that? Without even trying, I get some news this weekend that you guys did pretty well at this last tournament. You were 6-0 before the final. Somebody got hurt. Can you imagine if you guys all had the mindset of winning states? Can you imagine if there was one leader on this team? Can you imagine? One leader. I watched you guys run. There wasn't a single leader. And I know what it is. In today's society, it's kind of hard. It's a little harder to lead. Because you start pushing everybody. People are like, man, this guy. I have the balls to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to lead this team. Okay? Don't be a team captain just because coach chose you to go up there and stand there for the coin toss. Okay? Somebody take over. I don't know what coach's criteria is for a team captain and this and that. To me, it's whoever's the leader. Sometimes Julian Ramirez leads my practices. He's 13. And I got seniors in there. But I got seniors in there that he beats their ass. He's 13. Is it talent? No, it's a choice. He made a choice to be great. So how many of you guys are going to make that same choice? How many of you guys? What's your last name?
Obregon.
Obregon?
Yes.
What's your last name? Huh?
Vizcaíno.
Vizcaíno. What's your last name? Stevens. How many of you guys represent that? Think about that. How many of you guys represent that? You step on the mat and you're representing Stevens. You're representing a family. You're representing a bloodline. How many of you guys represent that name? How many of you guys wear your name on your chest? Start thinking about that. When you step out on the mat, it's not just a wrestling match. You know, it's not just a wrestling match. You step out on that mat, you're representing your school, you're representing your team, you're representing your coaches, you're representing your name. You're representing your name, that's important. Nowadays, people don't think about that, but that's important. Okay? That when people, it's an honor to me. It's an honor to me when I go to my son's old high school, and all the teachers have something great to say about it. You know, when I walk into that wrestling room and there's a poster of him on the friggin' wall, and everybody knows who Verona is. That's an honor. Imagine giving that honor to your parents, your father, your mother, your coaches. Imagine that you have the ability to do that. You have the ability, okay, to leave a stamp on this school, okay, that Obregón started here and became an undefeated state champ. Imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine that. That you're in 9th grade, you're a big-ass heavyweight, and you have the ability to be a 2, 3, 4-time state champion at Coronado Senior High School. Imagine that. If you make that decision. It's a tough decision to make because it's consistency. It means I'm going to work my ass off every single day. The moment you guys walk in through that door, okay, you need to, whatever your goal is, state champ, you touch that door and you make yourself a promise every day. And you touch it. You don't have to tell anybody anything. That's just personal. We call it intrinsic. It comes from the inside. You touch the door and you say to yourself, state champ. And you come in here on a mission every day. And if every day you're not practicing to a level that your partner is saying, hey man, slow down, you know, then you're not pushing yourself enough. Instead of, coach says, we're going shark bait, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4. And then you get 1 and 4 and you get out. And you sit down, no man. Every time you get out, pump out 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups. You know? And don't wait for coach to tell you to go back and say, man, can I go in an extra one? Can I go in an extra 2? Can I go in an extra 3? And keep going, and going, and going, and going, and going. And push yourself more than everybody else. So you can accomplish more than everybody else. Everybody else, grab a partner, you got a 2-minute drill on your own. Let's go.